Before the 20th century, exploration of space was limited to observations from the Earth. However, the world experienced a major breakthrough in space exploration in the 20th century, including putting the first dog in space. Let's assume this was some centuries ago. We wouldn't have thought this was even possible. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the first dog in space. What was the dog doing in space, and what happened to the dog afterwards? You're about to find out in this video, so make sure you watch until the end. The 20th century marked the beginning of the first successful physical space exploration. This was a great feat that nobody thought was possible then. Therefore, this resulted in what was called a space race among countries that realized its possibility and potential. The two major countries that were competing to win the space race were the USSR and United States. However, this race was not a mere competition to see who gets to space first. It was an issue of national security, as these two countries were Cold War rivals, and the first space explorations had their origin in the ballistic missile-based nuclear arms race. It was just a few years after World War II, and Americans were worried that the Soviet Union was going to plant a nuclear weapon in space, and the Soviet Union thought Americans would do the same. Finally, the USSR beat the Americans in sending the first artificial satellite into space on October 4, 1957. The Sputnik 1 was an artificial Earth satellite launched into low orbit, and it orbited the Earth 3 weeks before its batteries died. During this time, it completed 1,440 orbits of the Earth, and it provided some valuable information about space, such as the density of the upper atmosphere and the ionosphere. This unprecedented success caused a lot of excitement for the world, especially the USSR. However, the war was far from over, as there were several first-time events that were yet to be done. For instance, the USSR would later beat the Americans in sending the first man and woman into space. At the height of this success, the USSR decided to seal their victory by launching the first spacecraft carrying a living animal into Earth orbit. Although they were successful in launching the first animal, this was a heartbreaking event that led to the loss of a poor dog in space. The name of the aircraft was Sputnik 2, and it was launched on November 3, 1957. Barely 1 month after the launch of Sputnik 1. Using animals for research is a common thing. In fact, there is evidence that dates back to the early 4th and 3rd century BCE on experiments on animals. They've been used as a model to test procedures that would be impossible to replicate using human subjects, and that was exactly what the Soviet Union did. During the early space exploration missions, some scientists believed that it would be impossible for humans to survive the launch or conditions of outer space. Because these missions were expensive and partly motivated by the space race, the Soviet Union wanted to avoid the loss as much as possible. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this video, smash the like button and subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss another interesting update from us. You've probably seen a science fiction movie where people appear to be floating freely in space, or the videos of astronauts on the International Space Station. That seems cool, right? However, little was known about the effect of spaceflight on humans before the launch of Sputnik 2. Some scientists even believed that humans would die before reaching space, and if they eventually make it to space, they wouldn't be able to survive the low gravity out there. Since science doesn't work on assumptions, Sputnik 2 was launched as an experiment to find out if living things could survive in space and their reaction to the new environment. So let's talk about the first dog in space and the little we knew about her. Her name was Laika, and she was a stray dog wandering the streets of Mexico. The scientists thought that such dogs would be perfect for their experiment since they were already exposed to the harsh conditions of weather and hunger. Laika was one of the 10 dogs selected for this experiment, and she was assumed to be about 3 years old at the time. After further screening, the number of dogs was reduced from 10 to 3. The last 3 dogs were Laika, Albina, and Mushka. Laika was the most preferred dog because of her character. In fact, a Russian magazine described her as a phlegmatic dog because she didn't quarrel with other dogs. Albina had already been on a high-altitude flight twice, and she was reserved as the backup, while Mushka was the control dog in the experiment. These dogs were subjected to intensive training to prepare them for the mission. For instance, they would only have limited space in the cabin of Sputnik 2, so they were made to live in progressively smaller cages for several days. Also, they were placed in centrifuges that would simulate what they would experience in an actual rocket, and they were exposed to noise similar to what they would hear in the aircraft. The training increased their pulse and blood pressure up to 2 times. They were introduced to special gelatinized food that would be their food in space. A special surgery was also performed on these dogs to plant sensors that would measure their breathing, pulse, and blood pressure. The Sputnik 2 was an ambitious project that was designed in a rush to mark the 40th year celebration of the October Revolution. According to a source, the design of the spacecraft was barely 4 weeks. Apart from finding the possibility of putting humans in space, the spacecraft was also equipped to measure solar radiation and cosmic rays. However, sending Laika into space was a suicide mission, as they were fully aware that she would never come back alive. As of then, they did not have any technology that could successfully bring a spacecraft back into the Earth's atmosphere safely. Therefore, she was expected to stay alive for just 7 days before the food supply and oxygen would be cut off. At liftoff, her rate of respiration increased about 3 to 4 times, and her heartbeat was twice the normal rate. Her vitals would later become normal some hours after the flight. But this was longer than what she experienced during training, so this suggested that she was tensed. After entering the 4th orbit, there was a system failure that increased the temperature of her cabin up to 43 degrees Celsius. Although she was expected to stay alive for 7 days, she probably died only after 7 hours because of this heartbreaking event. After 162 days in space, Sputnik 2 re-entered the Earth's atmosphere rapidly, and Laika's body was never recovered. This mission might not have gone as expected, but it showed that it was possible to send humans to space successfully. In 1961, the Soviet Union sent the first man, Yuri Gagarin, into space. On April 11, 2008, a Russian official unveiled the monument made in honor of Laika and her sacrifice that can never be forgotten. Laika was the first animal in space, but she wasn't the last. Some other significant launches of animals into space include Gordo, a squirrel monkey that was launched on December 13, 1958. Sadly, he died while returning to Earth when the flotation device failed. A year later in 1959, a rhesus monkey, Abel, and a squirrel monkey, Baker, were sent to space. Luckily for them, they returned safely to Earth, but Abel died during an operation to remove the electrode under her skin. Baker lived long enough, but later died at age 27 due to kidney failure. Another interesting spaceflight involved a chimpanzee called Ham. This time around, scientists didn't just want to put animals in space, they wanted animals to participate in the process too. In 1961, Ham became a celebrity after his flight by being the first animal to successfully interact with a space vessel. Ham would receive a banana if he could successfully pull the lever, an enticing offer that would make him learn quickly. Also, learning to pull the lever meant he would avoid electric shock. So if pleasure wasn't what motivated him, then pain was. On October 18, 1963, some French scientists launched the first cat into space. He was retrieved back into the Earth after a parachute descent in 1966. 2 Russian dogs set a space record that would take humans 8 years to break. These 2 dogs, Vedorok and Ugolyak, orbited the Earth for 22 days. These are just a few out of the many animals that have been sent to space. Although technology has advanced to bring them back safely, not all of them make it back alive. This has raised serious concerns about animal rights, and several activists have never been in support of such actions. What do you think about sending animals into space? Do you think it should be stopped? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to get more interesting updates from this channel.